So like if they're not allowing people to track them, then you don't know if they're on your site.
If they're telling Google not to track them, yeah, you'll get some data, but it won't be the personal level data. So you're not going to get necessarily.
You will know, like you will have enough information to someone visit your site through Google Analytics if you explicitly said that I don't want people tracking me.
You would have that there was a visitor there and that's it.
That's not what Pinterest is telling me.
Isn't it?
Pinterest is not telling me that. They're telling me something very different.
Okay, that may have changed with GDRP, the European General Data Processing Rule, which a lot of big companies brought over here. My understanding was you'd at least get the visit.
Okay.
You're not going to get anything. So we'll look at this. We'll look at like the really detailed stuff, but you wouldn't get what kind of browser they're on. You wouldn't get any of the demographic information. You just get I'm pretty sure you get that there was a hit and that's the end of it.
What are we talking about? Google Analytics?
Yeah, if they've said don't track, you're not getting any of the granular. You do see the session now. Unless GDRP changed that, which it could have.
I think you still get what kind of browser that they're on and whether they're on desktop or mobile and really basic stuff like that.
Yeah.
You just don't get demographic stuff, like you won't know if they're male, female, how old they are, stuff like that.
And where they moved around your site. Okay. Anything else? Cool. So one of the easiest ways to think about Google Analytics is as a funnel. So if you're familiar with marketing funnels, sales funnels, you can think of this as a user funnel. So at the top of the funnel, you've got your audience, right? The people that you are wanting to come to your website and the basic demographic information about that. Once you've got them on their website, you're attracting visitors. And you're going to see that in the acquisition tab in Google Analytics. You want to be able to measure the interactions people are having with your website. And you're going to see that in the behavior tab. And then finally, you want to track those business goals, right? Are people converting? Are they signing up for your email list? Are they reading your blog articles? Are they buying stuff from you if you have an e-commerce store? And you're going to see that on the conversion side of the funnel. So as people move through your website, you'll be able to see that. That's a good way to think about how Google Analytics is organizing the data. And with that, we'll switch over and look at some analytics. Maybe. It's thinking hard. Real quick, so while we're waiting on this to load up, the easiest way to get Google Analytics onto your website is I use the plugin Monster Insights. That's probably the quickest way to get it on there. If you're doing a lot of event tracking, and Rob's going to talk about event tracking, but if you're doing event tracking, so you want to know when people play a video or when they listen to an audio file or something like that, in my experience, the easiest implementation is to use Google Tag Manager and use Tag Manager to put that onto your website. It saves you a lot of work in getting that event tracking to fire on the play and the clicks. Okay, so when we hit the home screen, this is for a nonprofit. Oh, wow, there's one person on it right now, too. Cool. This is for a nonprofit over in Iowa that works on environmental and prairie preservation over there. So they're the client that we're going to be looking at, but this is a live website that I built 3 or 4 years ago for them. So when you get to your home screen, this is where Google is using some of their AI to give insights. I think they're trying to catch up with Microsoft and their business intelligence here, but it will tell you some stuff. And the more you use the reports, the better Google gets, and it will show you better dashboards here so you have an idea of what's going on your website. But we're going to go all this in detail. So we'll start off with the audience. Well, I guess we can start off with the real-time tab. The real-time tab is exactly what it sounds like. It's who's on your website in real time. I don't operate many websites that are big enough for this to be useful for me because at any given time I usually only have 4 or 5 people on a website, although we have 1 person on their desktop here right now. So that's good. I didn't tell them to do that. And we can see where they're located. They're there. Yeah, let's talk about the audience, folks. So when you get to the audience overview, this is the data that when I work with small businesses, a lot of people tend to focus on. How many users do they get? How many of those users are new? How many sessions are there? A session is anybody who's on your website and remains active for more than 30 minutes. So if they are not active for 30 minutes, so the phone rings, they go, they come back to your website, it's 30 minutes of inactivity have elapsed, that'll still be one user, but it's going to count as 2 sessions now. So that's the difference between your sessions and your users. Does that make sense to everybody? Cool. Number of sessions per user, so how many times a user is having a session, page views, average page views per session, duration, and bounce rate. So these are all things that you're looking at to figure out how engaged are people with your website. One of the things that I like to do that can further segment this out is if you want to know how many of these people are coming in from organic traffic, you can use these segments. How many people are familiar with segments? Okay, cool. So I'm going to look at an organic traffic segment, and then we'll set up segments later, or we'll set up segments here towards the end of this. So what I can do is I've set up segments to show me how much of my traffic comes in from organic search, so stuff that we're not paying for, and how much of my traffic comes in from social media. So in my past life, I worked at a franchise system, and we would have franchisees every now and then who would run advertisements for their website against our advice, because their pages were not set up for pay per click. But that would also throw off my numbers for everybody else. So I set up a segment, or I set up a view to exclude those folks so I can see this. And I've also got it in segment. That way, my numbers aren't thrown off, so when I go back to report to the C-suite leadership we had, I wasn't giving them stuff that someone was paying to send a lot of junk traffic to our website. So if we look at this now, we can see that my all users, I can break that out into 82 of those users came in through organic, and 22 of them came in through social media. And I can do that across all of my other stats. So if you're wondering, well, am I showing up in search? Or if I know I'm showing up in search, how many people are finding me? This is a good way to look. Or if you're running a social media campaign. So right now, social media is high for them. And I know it's because they offer student grants in the summer. So this organization has been promoting student grants over their Facebook channel. So we're actually seeing more social media traffic than we normally would see from them.
How do you split your own people in your own office?
So you would do a filter to do that, and that's a good one. You want to keep your data clean. So you would go into your admin section to exclude that. And then under your filters, so this right here under your property settings, or excuse me, your view settings, you would go in here and you'd hit add filter. And then you'd use one of the predefined filters, exclude, and then you'd exclude it from your IP address. And then you'd enter your IP address in there. If you're at home, remember, especially if you're on Cox, I think they have dynamic IP addresses. So your IP address is going to change at home. At business, you're usually on a static IP. But if you're checking stuff from your home frequently, it's a good idea to either use a VPN, so you're always hitting it from the same place, or go in and check and update that routinely. Someone said, just exclude everybody on the Cox. Well, that's not a good idea if you're here in Omaha, because now you're excluding that range. So don't do that. That's not clever. But yeah, definitely go, and if you aren't excluding your own traffic, go and exclude your traffic. That way you're not on there. I am never on this website, so I am not excluding myself right now. Any questions on excluding filters or segments?
Sorry. So when you're creating the segments, you take a step back. How did you create those segments for organic traffic and social media traffic?
Right. So what you can do, and I'll show one I think a little bit later in the presentation. You can click on New Segment, or if you don't like reinventing the wheel, you can import from a gallery. And this has a lot of segments that other people have already created to make your life easier. So check that out. But if you want to start a new segment, you can come in here and then you can choose how you want to filter this. So if I only wanted to see people in a specific age range, or if I only wanted to see people who are on a mobile device or a certain type of operating system, I can go through and do that. one of the things, and we'll get to this later in there when I'm talking about how to set up URLs so you can monitor your stuff, but we'll go through how to set up a segment to cover that part of it. But there are also, segments are really powerful. Are you going to talk about sequences? Okay. Yes. I'm not.
It looks like there's all these segments that are kind of predefined.
Yep.
You just pick and choose from.
You can, yeah, absolutely. You can do that if you don't want to reinvent the wheel. If you have something custom, though, I'll get to that. I'll come back, and if I don't, remind me to come back to this. So that's segments. The rest of this stuff in here is pretty well geared towards ads, so I'm going to skip over the stuff that isn't necessarily specific to organic search. We can have one on ads at some point in time. User Explorer, if you haven't looked at this feature is nifty. Cancel my segment out here. The other thing, make sure you're doing your date picker. If you want to look at a wider range, I'm going to go back here and grab some bigger ones. So these are specific people who have been on this website. If you have that do not track on, you would not get any of this data. That would not show up in here. But this person has had 11 sessions. So this is one individual. Now we don't know who it is because Google's anonymizing the data. But I can go in here and I can see their very first session was back on May 14th. They showed up on an organic search. They didn't stick around long. But they did come back on March 22nd for 34 seconds. And then they came back April 4th for 26 minutes. They're on our website. And if I click on any of these, I can drop down and I can see exactly what they did during their time on our site. So here, when they started their visit at 7:06, they started looking at the To Protect the Prairies, which is one of our more popular pages. And then we can just look through here and see exactly how they went through and used our website. This is really handy if you want to spot check and see how visitors are interacting with your website or what that flow is. There's definitely a visitor flow tool here where you can see in aggregate how people are moving through the website. But every now and then, especially for somebody who has had a long session on our website, I'll pop in and just look and see how they were looking around our website. That can help me figure out, do I want to change my calls to action? Should I put better hand-picked content in there? Other things to hold people on the website, or see where things are working out really well. You can pull this data into Google Data Studio or Power BI, and then you can really parse it that way. So if you want to get a nice granular detail, Google Data Studio, which I don't have a ton of experience with, I've got more experience with Power BI, but you can use that to process this data so you can get even more fine-tuned. How many people knew this was in here? How many people are a little freaked out that there's this much information that you've got on your website? Yeah.
It doesn't freak me out.
I personally liked it as a marketer. This was great. So User Explorer, you can go back in, you can see how people are interacting with your website. If they are signed into Chrome, both on their mobile device and on their computer, you get to see both their mobile device and their desktop activity here. So one of the other clients I work with is a property management company. They have apartments down in Lincoln. So we can actually see that users are starting their discovery on their phone. They're looking for apartments near me. And then when they actually want to look at floor plans or other things like that, they'll get on their desktop or their laptop and look at it on that device. So that was handy for us to see that user journey where it starts out on mobile and then moves over to the desktop before they convert. Yeah.
So what if you're also signed into your Android TV or your...
If you're signed into Google, it's capturing it.
So
now,
would it show it separately? Or
it's
like
not going to show that there's a TV. It'll show you on a
those little things
desktop.
that Google has, what do they call it?
Yeah, the TV box. Yeah, it's going to show it as a desktop. It's not going to show it as a mobile, just because of your screen resolution on that
So
one.
those little Lenovo things, what do they call them?
The Chromecasts?
Right, that you can just keep anywhere.
Yeah, if you're
I have
casting
one
from your
there.
phone, it'll come on as a phone.
It's the
No, you don't
Untitled,
cast it.
so it's an
It's
Android
not a
device.
casting. It's like a device on its own.
It's an Android device.
It's an Android device.
Yeah, it'll see it as a mobile device.
Unless the screen resolution's high enough, then
It
it'll
doesn't
kick it
get
over
super
to.
granular in
Yeah.
terms of like what exact device they're using. It basically just shows you like operating system, and then based off of that, it knows whether it's mobile or not in the web browser.
Because now you have TVs that run Android, and you can just talk to the TV, and it's got Google Assistant and Chromecast built into the TV, and you can see things on the TV without any computer.
It's handy. Yeah.
So what happens if, like, I constantly open a bunch of tabs and then I just leave them there? Does it show when you're, like, not actively using?
So after 30 minutes of inactivity, it'll time it out, and then that would be a new session again. Although occasionally you will see someone who's on here for like 40 minutes and not moving around, which maybe means they're moving their mouse around, but you can assume that they had basically become inactive and weren't looking, right? It's not 100% science, but it gets close enough that you get a general idea. Okay, so let's talk about demographics. I mean, this was exciting when Google came out, that I thought, and now we've got so much more granular. So once again, I've got my segments active at the top, so I'm seeing my breakout through all of this. I'm going to go ahead and turn these off just so it's easier to watch or see what's going on. So obviously we've got our age groups and what our the gender of the folks who are visiting our website is. I'm going to drill down into the age one and show some different things on
You have to
this.
opt into that though.
What?
You have to opt into that.
Yeah, you do need to turn this on in the settings.
Basically, the way that works is that by saying that you want that data, you're also saying it's okay for Google to have your data.
Right.
That's the catch.
And you need to update your privacy policy on your website if you are collecting that. Also, if you have a very old Google website, which I had a few of those that were still on their old tracking code, you do have to be on the universal tracking code, which has been out for a few years now. But I did find when I was going back through and cleaning up some of my old websites, I had not migrated my tracking code. So if you've got a really old website that you haven't updated your tracking code, Google was harassing you for months to do it. But if you didn't, you do need to have that universal tracking code before we get here.
What would you say would be the most efficient way to learn this, or maybe another spin on that is, what's a really great tutorial to use just to kind of get a run through on the whole deal?
If you go through their Discover, and I'll open that up right now, they've got a whole Google Analytics Academy that they've got videos for, and they will even give you a test and you can get a little certificate from them afterwards. But yeah, so click on this Discover down here and it'll pop you into Google Analytics Academy. So everybody's on the Wi-Fi tonight. Okay, so if we're looking at age, and I've got a client who runs, I know she hates it when I call it a mommy blog, but that's essentially what it is. So for her having a wide variety of age groups, this is an important metric to her, right? Because she's got young women who are looking at being mothers, and then people who are new mothers, as well as people who are mothers and getting ready to send their kids off to college. So she wants to have a wide amount of content on her website. So one of the metrics that's really important to her is this age. And one of the things that we can do for this is, so we've got our primary dimension right here, which is called age. Our secondary dimension, we can add in another feature here. So one of the things I looked at with her when we sat down and looked at her blog was the landing pages. So when we look at this, we can see, the other thing you can do, I don't necessarily appreciate it sorting by user. So if you click on the tab up here, it's going to change how it sorts the column. And I've got enough OCD, I like my ages to be chronological. So when we're sorting by the second dimension of landing page, what it tells me is the 18 to 24 demographic, they're either hitting the front page, so this is the root, so they're hitting our home page. Anytime you see just the slash, that's the home page. And they're also hitting the second most one we're seeing here is the list of prairies, which makes sense to us because typically when we have younger people on this website, they're doing school research. Same with college kids. So we can go through here and we can see what age groups are landing on which pages. So one of the things that this enabled us to do on her blog was, one, see what organic content was working well, and then we could find other pages when we get down into the behavior of other content that did well. So we know these are the top landing pages. If you're ever reading through a blog and it says hand-picked content or content that was specially selected for you, that's one way to go through it. So we looked at what brings in the organic traffic. And now she knows, right, she's got different content on her website that appeals to different age groups. So now she knows specifically how she can target different content to pull people deeper into her website and to hold them on the website longer.
It's a very dumb question. When you say organic traffic, what do you mean?
So, sorry, yeah, no, that's not a dumb question. That's a good question. If you have typed into Google a search, so here, if they've typed in Iowa prairies, and they just typed that into Google, they scrolled down, they clicked on our link. That's organic. That is traffic that they didn't pay for. If you are paying for advertisements, that would be paid traffic, right? So when you see those ads up at the top or the banner ads on the side, that would be paid. The other type of traffic would be social media traffic. We'll look at the sources in that. If you see direct, that means somebody just typed it in or they used a bookmark to get there. But yeah, so organic traffic is anyone who's coming to your website that wasn't paid or didn't come in from one of those. So Bing, Google, all those folks.
So is direct traffic not organic in its nature by default? That's not organic?
It calls it out as direct. It's not counted into the search traffic.
Right.
Yeah.
So it sits outside of that categorization.
Yep. So you'll see direct and none on your source. So if you do it that way, so like when I'm passing out business cards and somebody goes to my website, they just type it in directly, that's direct. That's one of the signals that Google uses to determine offline brand strength. So if you're working for a company, one of the things Google wants to know is, are you a legitimate company offline? So those number of direct traffic coming into you is one of the factors that Google uses to see that you're a real company in the world.
So what about when you start typing it in and it suggests the website for you?
I believe that still is going to count as direct.
Okay.
Am I right? Someone know? Okay. I'm pretty sure it still counts as direct because you never actually hit that search engine result page and clicked through. So the other thing we can do here, there are different views for each one of these on here. You can always look through. You've got your chart up front. But then you've got a bunch of different views down here at the bottom. So your standard view is always going to be this table. You've got a pie chart. Obviously, it makes sense to use some of these in different ones. For those of you who love pivot tables, you can pivot table to your heart's content with your Google Analytics data over here. I am not a pivot table person. I don't know if people are. But I've got a better example for how we can use pivot tables here as we go down. Let's pop back here. So, like I was saying, one of the things that we did when we were looking at her blog, because again, age was really important to how she was segmenting out her traffic, is we looked at where people were coming in. The other thing we looked at in this secondary dimension were called exit pages. So a landing page is any page that somebody lands on at your website, right? They go to Google, they search for it, they land on that. You pay for advertising, they land on it. There's a link that they click on from social media. That's their first interaction with your website. That's a landing page. An exit page is the exact opposite, is the last page that they are on your website with and where they jump off. So the other thing that it's good to look here, so here's our exit pages, again by age group. Out of order again. And we can see these exit pages. So this one right here, number 3, Guide to Prairie Management, has 100% bounce rate. So we know that people are leaving this page 100% of the time. We don't have anyone staying on it. And I know this page, it is just a guide. We don't have anything else for you to do. It's just straight up the text of the page. So if we wanted to keep people on, you can look at your exit pages and then again add those call to actions or do that content that you might be interested in as a way to keep people engaged and pull them into their website. Because we can see that our time on page on some of these where we have a high bounce rate is pretty low. We've got a 70% bounce rate with only 24 seconds, which would indicate that they're probably not finding what they're looking for when they land on that page. How many folks use the interest category? Okay, so I've seen a lot of people misuse this. The affinity category, this is again primarily used for marketing purposes, right? So if you're going to go out there and buy this, is going to help you refine your audience. But I've seen some people do some things based on data here, so I want to talk about it a little bit so you don't make mistakes. Affinity category, so this box up here at the first section. Think of this as kind of the same thing that TV advertisers pay for. So when you're running TV ads, you go out and you say, I want to find the people who are into cooking and cooking enthusiasts, right? The stuff that's the advertisers who are primarily going to be on the Cooking Network channels. That's what the affinity category is. It's similar to buying the same that you would on TV. In-market segment just tells us what type of products people who are visiting your website are most likely to buy. If you're using affiliate links as a way to monetize your website, this can at least help give you an idea of what type of affiliate links or content to write so you can better monetize your website. And then finally, this other category here, it really should say this is your visitors, because the other category is what the visitors on your website are most likely to look like. Questions, comments, concerns, complaints?
How come my page does not have interest on it?
So you've got to go in to admin and enable this. So I'll show you how to do that, because you've got to have this enabled for both the interest and for the demographics. So on property settings, so I've clicked on the little gear down at the bottom, and then on property settings, it's going to pull up for me to enable demographics and interest reports. So if this is not turned on your website, you're not going to have the tabs I just showed you. That's what Rob was mentioning too here a minute ago. If you interact with Europe or you have people coming from Europe who are EU citizens, you'll need to update your privacy policy if you turn this on, just because of GDPR. That's a rule that changes how EU citizens' data is protected digitally. A lot of US companies, just because it's so hard to keep people separated, are using that here too. That help you find it? And it will take a little while for that data to start to populate.
There's no on-off switch on one.
There's no on-off switch?
Yeah, it doesn't have enabled demographics.
Then you may be on one of the older ones. I can take a look at it after the presentation. We can figure it out.
Can I ask a question?
Yeah.
You mentioned privacy policy or privacy statement. How do you put that on the website?
So a lot of websites will have down at the very bottom privacy policy in terms of use. There are generators out there. There are actually WordPress plugins that will handle it for you. And following GDPR, I think WordPress 4.8 or so, starts to include a privacy policy that you can just fill in. And it's pretty blanket. But if you need a more specific one, so like I said, the property management company I work with, they're down in Lincoln. We know that they have EU students renting from them. So we had to go through all the GDPR hoopla to make sure that their privacy policy was in compliance with the EU. WordPress has actually made it a lot easier though since that to manage data, and you can purge it, you can set up scheduled purges, so it is, and they do have a privacy policy there. Otherwise, I use Rocket Lawyer. They've got a generator. There are plenty of good generators out there. Docracy is another good place to get open source documents. I think my terms of service came off of Docracy. So if you need yeah, don't ask me to spell in front of a large room. I'll just show you how completely inept I am at that.
How did you spell it?
DOCRACY. Docracy. I was in the spelling bee.
You win. You look familiar.
They didn't let me anywhere close to the spelling stuff. But yeah, Docracy, Rocket Lawyer, and then like I said, WordPress has built-in stuff. There are plugins out there that you can get off the WordPress repository too that'll handle all that for you. If you are collecting information on a website, either through a form or through something like Google Analytics, you should probably have a privacy policy and a terms of use. Okay, let's talk about geography. How many folks are managing a large web or a website that would be more than just like you're interested in people than more than just the Omaha metro? Okay, I'll spend a little bit of time. No hands went up. I was just gonna breeze through this. So when we get to our geography, I'm in location. Language will obviously give you the breakdown by language on your website. We can look at that report. So if you're wondering, now this is identified by the browser, so when you do your HTML markup and you tell it what language is in there, that's where it's pulling this from. So you can look at that report if you're optimizing or if you're using WordPress multi-language. So on here we've got our heat map. When we're back to the geography, we've got our heat map so I can see where people are coming from. Obviously the darker shade means they're coming from the United States. We will click into the US, and then this being the Iowa Prairie Network, obviously most of their visitors are coming from Iowa, and a handful are coming from across the river in Omaha. So when we load into this report, we can see the heat map of where everybody from around the state is accessing our website. And again, what's handy here, so then once again we can get in and now we've got our list of our top 10 communities. It does show me down here at the bottom, you can see that there's 122 rows down here. So if I want to see more than that, I can just tell it to show me however many rows I want. If you want to get into parsing this data, I'd recommend using a tool like Google Data Studio or Power BI. Is going to make your life a little bit easier and a little bit quicker. But then we can go across. And that funnel that I talked about at the very beginning, the acquisition for how people are finding us and who they are, that behavior and the conversions. We don't have anything to do on this website other than sign up for a membership. So I don't have goals set. And Rob's going to talk more about the goals so you can measure what's going on your website. But so we'll look at these first two. So when I look at this in Des Moines, I'm going across my top row. I can see we had 47 users out of Des Moines. 43 of them were new. We've got 63 sessions. So again, that session is they were inactive for more than 30 minutes or they came back to restart the section. Our bounce rate for Des Moines is a little bit lower than it is for the overall. So you can see at the very top line is my overall, so you can compare the cities or any report that we're looking at on how you're doing against your website's average. Pages per session, so we know that they're visiting about 2, almost 3 pages per session, and they're on their website for almost 3 minutes. So that's not bad for the type of content we have on here. Obviously, your mileage is going to vary, right? If you're a publisher, you're going to want people to be on the website a lot longer. If you're a sales website, you're probably going to want to lean towards shorter times and watch your funnel and your sequence, right? So people have an easy time buying the stuff on your website, right? You're trying to eliminate friction there and make it easy for people to pass through. I'm going to drill down into Des Moines so we can see a little bit more information on how people out of this city are interacting. If you are running just a website that's only targeting Omaha like I am for one of mine right now, this isn't terribly useful because we can't get into the neighborhood level. So you need something that's regional or you can have different metros in it. So we can see Des Moines, and this isn't terribly useful in and of itself. But if I do a secondary dimension, and once again I want to look at landing pages here, so I can see where people from Des Moines are hitting my website. So now I've got a little better report here from when people are or how people are landing on our website. Now again, I know we're not running any ads on this website, so this is going to be all organic. So when people are searching in Des Moines, this is where they're landing. And one of the ways you can use this landing page report too is also look at maybe where you have a short of people on your website for a short amount of time and a high bounce rate. One of the things that I know has a high bounce rate is this session number 3 right here. Session number 3 it talks about burning on private land. So if you're a private landowner who is managing a prairie, this goes through the process for burning that prairie. That's all that's on this page, and if you look at it, It doesn't have kind of some of the best practices for multiple, I guess it does have multiple headings. So that's what the page looks like. It's pretty straightforward, but you can see that we've got a huge bounce rate coming off of it. So if I was trying to optimize this website, and we're actually going back through and we're going to do a rebuild on their website next month, one of the things that we'll do on this burn session is we'll start to give people more resources for query management. So once they hit this, because we know that out of Des Moines, at least, and we look at this in Iowa in general, we know that a lot of landowners, especially in the spring when it's time for fire season to maintain their prairie, they're finding this in search, but they're not spending a lot of time, which means we're not delivering a good user experience or necessarily the right user information for them.
So what are the metrics to find it as a bounce?
So a bounce is they come to your website, they look at one page, and they're gone. The other thing I can see when I look at this is they're spending, on average, 0 seconds on this page. And when we look at this outside of Iowa, or when we look at Iowa larger, like they're only spending about 15 seconds on this page. So my guess based on that is that they come, they're looking for other information, they're not finding it on that page, and they're bouncing back to that search engine result page. So that's what a bounce would be.
So I'm guessing that the 100% is right away to leave, and then the lower the percentage, the more time they spend.
Right, so the lower the percentage, that would be the number of users. So right now, everybody who hits this page leaves. Our home page, this very top one, only 35% of the visitors who hit that leave. The rest of them go somewhere else on the website and look at another page.
Or stay on it for some extended period of time, I think. I don't know what that time
Not
is.
if you don't have event tracking set up.
Really?
Yeah, really. So have your event tracking set up. It may be. I think you have to have event tracking for it to fire.
Tracking matter, though.
Because it doesn't know if it's an inactive session. I'll send you the link. So anyhow, that's one of the ways that we can look at that. The other thing that if you are checking on this, we can do source medium. So like I said, I know that we're not running any advertisements on this page right now, or on this website right now. But if you are, you can do this source medium. So source is how people got to your website, right? How did they come? And the media, or the source is where they were, the source is where they were before they saw your website. So if I look at this number one, is Google. So they were at Google before they came here, and the medium is organic. So that's organic search. They didn't pay for it. The one right below it is direct. So that's the typing it into the search bar, and then the medium is none because they just typed directly in. You can see our number 3 is a referral. So this is an outside website that is linking over to us. And you can see number 4 is Facebook, and that's our social media that's referring traffic to us. One word of caution here for any folks who are new and looking at these, especially when you look at your referral traffic. A lot of times you will see a website that sent a bunch of traffic to you. Easy or mybusiness123success.com. Don't go to that website. A lot of folks say, ooh, who is this website that's sending me all of this information? It's a trap. A lot of the time, there's going to be malware on that website that they're trying to get you to download because you saw that. So that's one way for them to bring people to their website and infect your computer. So if you see something that looks sketchy and usually has a lot of numbers in the domain, but it sent you a lot of traffic all at once, ignore it and reset your filter so you can filter those folks out. But this one, I know ecousa.net is a legitimate website, although they've only sent us one person in the time we're looking at. So does that make sense about how you can use the geography and then use those second dimensions to really get a better understanding of how people are interacting with your website?
Can you view the source unfiltered by location?
Yeah, we'll get into that when we get into the behavior one. Yep, we can look at, there's a bunch of different ways to kind of get at the same data. So a lot of this does come down to personal preference on how you like to get there, but there's a lot of different ways. Okay, so then, any other questions? Sorry. Okay, cool. There is a behavior under audience, which should not be confused with the behavior tab, just because, we're really clear on this one. Your behavior is going to be your new versus returning visitors. For some folks, getting new visitors all the time to your website is really important. For other folks, having a bunch of return visitors is more important, especially if you're running a website that deals a lot in content, or you're running a blog and you want people to continue to come back and be loyal and engage with your website. So on this one, all I did was I just switched my chart over to the pie graph, so it makes it a little bit easier to see. But again, if we wanted to look at these new visitors, we can drill down into this by clicking on the link. And we can go into these secondary dimensions again and look at, so new visitors in general, what pages are they landing on? We can see what pages our new visitors are exiting on. And again, this can inform our content strategy and where we want to change our calls to action and put that on our website. It gives us a better idea of our new visitors. We can also look at our returning visitors and see where they're coming back to. Another really good way to do this is if you come into this report, let me change my view back here. And this is what I've done with some clients. So we've come in here, we've looked at the new visitor report, and we've looked at what pages are they landing on, especially when it's a blog. And then we've looked at ways to repackage that blog content. So turn it into an infographic, or if it's maybe 6 months older, but it doesn't necessarily have a time stamp on it, and it's still relevant, we'll re-promote it on social media, because we see that new visitors are coming here, and you're looking for low bounce rates, which I don't have any on this page. I've got my Prairie FAQs down at the very bottom. So if you've got something that new visitors are coming to, you see that they're going to more pages and that they're engaged with your website through a low bounce rate and time. Repackage that content either as an infographic, or if it's a piece of cornerstone content, a long blog post, you can change that into an email campaign if you've got email campaigns set up on your website and repurpose it. But this is a really handy way to see what's bringing new visitors into your website, and then amplify that content so you can continue to attract more and new visitors. So this is one way you can use this metric in your strategy.
Business categories, is there a place you can look at to see what's an average on the site time for my category business?
Yep. Google it. MailChimp has probably the best list that I've seen for metrics. I think SendGrid had some stuff a while ago. It does change, so just make sure that you're looking at dates. But yeah, there are some industry averages out there. I think Google AdWords, or I guess it's just Google Ads now, would have some of that data too, just to help you benchmark your ad campaigns. Any other questions?
On the views there, like underneath where it says bounce rate 67.20, and then underneath that average per view, what does that average per view mean? There's numbers versus the numbers right above it.
Okay, yeah, good question. So right now I am just looking at my new visitors. The little gray beneath that is the overall website. So this is a percentage of my total. So right now I'm just looking at my new visitor segment. This would be everybody. So that would include, in this case, the returning visitors. And you'll always see that when you segment it out. So then you're kind of getting a benchmark for this audience that I'm looking at, or this segment of the audience that I'm looking at. How does it compare to everyone else? I'm going to move right along here because I'm starting to eat into Rob's time.
You're good, man. I don't think he minds.
Yeah, but I want you guys to see the goals and conversion, because that's the really important stuff, is being able to see how people are interacting with your website and actually make the decision, am I achieving the goals that I want my website to do? So technology, I mean, this is browser and OS. I think the more important report out of here, if you're a developer, this isn't bad to look at. So, whenever I start to rebuild somebody's website, I'll look at what browser and the screen resolution they're using. So I know kind of where I really need to pay attention and making sure that I'm pixel perfect there. And, for some reason I see Edge jump all the way up, which I did see on one client. I don't know why. Then I'm going to take some extra time and make sure it works in Edge, which will soon be Chromium. What's probably going to be more relevant for you is the tab that's called Mobile. And this is going to show you your mobile devices versus your desktop devices. And I'm really showing you this website just to prove that there are still websites out there today that get the majority of their traffic from desktops. Because really the trend is almost everything is mobile first these days. But here, we've got 65% of our traffic coming from desktop.
I think you're going to find that still be the case very often, more often than not, actually. It depends on what your target market is, right. What type of people are visiting your website. it's a business-related website. A lot of people are doing it from work on a desktop computer, so.
So for here, and that's a really good point. For here, this is a research website, right? It's academic information about prairies. So when people are researching, they tend not to be doing that from their mobile phone. They want a nice big screen where they can sit down and read through the content. So we do know that the majority of ours, so when we start to do this rebuild, we will certainly make sure it's mobile friendly, but we're also not going to spend a ton of time making sure that every pixel is perfect on our mobile devices, because we just don't see that many people using it on their mobile device. Google's also been kind enough not to kick us over to mobile indexing. Cross-device is in beta. I don't believe I have this enabled on our site yet. No, I don't. So if you continue on and activate Google Signals, kind of the cool thing about here is if you thought that report that went through and showed you how people are moving around your website was creepy, this will actually show you how people are moving across their devices. But you do have to enable this, again, because I have people who have to abide by that GDPR. I have not turned this on because it's an account-wide thing. So until I can talk with my attorney about what that does to our privacy policies, I haven't enabled it. But that is out there, and it's so you can see how people are moving between their devices. It's handy.
So if you enable it, that means that all of your customers that you're managing.
Right, so everyone under this account. So one of those things is if you are doing the freelance thing, it's a good idea to kind of plan in advance how do you want to use this, because if I had this to do over, I wouldn't necessarily have lumped all of my clients into one, because I've got a few big clients who have some very specific needs, and then kind of everybody else is more general and doesn't have those needs. So thinking that one through. And then finally, the user workflow or the user flow. This is a good report that you can look at. I am going to change my primary tag here over to landing page. So again, this is the page that they are entering on. And what we can see here is their interaction with our website. So this is the starting page. So again, the slash means it's the home page. They're on the route. So they're at iowaprairienetwork.org. And then we can see what happens to them next. I'm as zoomed out as I can be on this. So we can go through the different interactions they have with this website. And if you click on this, I can highlight the traffic that comes through this page. So I can see the first, so they come to our home page, and then that next interaction, I can see where people go next on the website. Again, you can get at this through the other reports or through sequences or through filtering, but if you're more of a visual person, or you just need a quick glance before you're going in to sit down with the client, or you make it part of your monthly routine to monitor your website, this is a good visual way to see what's going on and where your drop-offs are. So the red indicates how many people left your website on that page. So I can see that on this first interaction, they're coming to the grants, which again, I know they're running social media right now promoting their summer grants for students. So it's not surprising that we're only seeing one drop-off here. But you can watch how people move through your website, which is a pretty handy way to visualize what your users are doing. When I've worked with other clients in the past, we'll look at this and we'll see where there are drop-offs and there shouldn't be drop-offs, right? If you're running an e-commerce site and you see a bunch of drop-offs at your shopping cart, that's probably something you need to go in and fix, because it means there's either technical difficulty or the process just isn't clear on how to do that. If you're running a blog and you see a bunch of people dropping off on your index page, I had this happen once. The read more now button wasn't working. So you just saw that little summary and you clicked read more and nothing happened. So we saw a lot of drop-offs on the blog. That was an indication there was a technical problem with the website. So look for, when you're looking at this or other reports, look for where you're seeing a bunch of drop-offs. And then you can either fix it if it's a technical problem, or look at calls to action, or maybe how you can simplify the process if you're in an e-commerce setting, to make it easier for people to complete their transaction or sign up for your email newsletter.
Is there a way to, an easy way to edit so the references that Google gets are oftentimes in context black and white. Is there an easy way to say I decided being listing 4843291, get the name that I know the page by?
Yeah, so you can actually go page title.
Oh, that's way easier.
I can't do page title in this report. Those other reports where we were in the actual table, you can look by page title. That's going to pull whatever the title tag off of the page is. So if your title tag makes sense on your page, that's what will show up here. I have got into websites where people's title tags also seem to be nonsensical, which is not an SEO best practice either. But yeah, you can pull it up in other reports by title page. I believe we'll get into that in acquisition. So let's talk through acquisition real quick, because I do want to give Rob a chance to talk through goals. So acquisition, this is simply how people are coming into your website. So again, we can see here that organic search is the majority of our how people are finding the website. If you were running display or pay-per-click or others, that would show up in here as well. One of the things that is always good to check is the referral sources. If you are a publisher or if you do a lot of e-commerce, this would be a way for you to find potential partnerships. If you've got somebody who's linking to your website, you can do outreach. I know I've had this happen to me. We were linking to a handful of different blogs at the last company I worked at, and their digital person sent me a message that said, hey, thanks for all the links. Consider linking to these 3 too. And it was relevant, so we did. But that's a good way to go in and see and start to develop partnerships here. So here, my number one is one of these kind of sketchy that I'm probably not going to click on. It's 4.5. Well, you can read that. There's a good chance if you go to this, you'll catch malware. Because what they're trying to do is they're trying to get people who don't know any better to click on this link, come to their website, and put malware on your computer. The rest of these, though, I think are probably legitimate. The other thing you can do, so you can hit landing page. So when the referral traffic comes in, we can see what it is. And then you can change. Here's where you can do page title, I believe. It was working this morning. Google would do that.
Either you use Windows Sandbox. So you bring up like a virtual.
Here it is, page title.
So if you click on something
Yep.
within that sandbox.
So you'll have to add it as a secondary dimension. But there, so yeah, if you add it as a secondary dimension, now you can see what it is. So I'm going to switch back to my channel grouping and go organic, but we've talked about how if you look at where people are landing off of your organic, so again, now I'm looking, you can see up here, maybe, that our default channel grouping is we've moved over to that organic. So I've got 82 sessions for the time range I selected. And we can see where they're landing, again, on the organic search. So you can do this with your social media. If people are finding old social media posts and that type of thing, this will show you their landing pages and what they're doing. Let's touch on behavior real quick. I'm going to expand this out. So everybody knows you can check your date picker up here. The other thing that's handy about this is the compare to feature. So a lot of times I'll want to look at my 30-day view. So if I want to look at this 30 days versus the last 30 days, you can easily click on this compare to previous period. You can also compare to the previous year, or you can do a custom. So we'll compare it to a previous year. And you can see that we're not doing bad. So page views are up, unique views are up, average time on site has dropped. It does this handy color coding red-green to tell you whether that metric is going in the right direction or the wrong direction. So this is us looking at it over the previous year. I guess the other thing I meant to mention when we were in our audience. So everyone see this little drop down right here, little square. If you click that, it pops down the annotation. This is a really handy feature to use, and I really recommend using it. So my previous life, I was in politics, and anytime we started an ad or we had something written about our candidate on one of the media sites, we'd jump in here and we'd make an annotation. So you just click on create annotation, you set your date, and then you just make a short, it's only 160 characters, so it's just a quick note. So, we'd say candidate on WOWT. That way, when you see a spike in traffic, or you're trying to look back at the last quarter or the last 30 days, and your memory isn't working well, you can at least see on here what caused that. So if you start to run paid advertising, or you do an email campaign, it's always good to come in here and make this annotation. There is a visibility. So if you've got other collaborators or other people have access, or clients have access to this, you can come in here and you can set it to be either shared or private. A good time to make it private is, say, a client broke their WordPress website, and you want to make note of that in the annotation. So when they're asking you, why was there this huge drop-off in traffic, you can say it's because you took your website down. First-hand experience? Okay.
Sure, it doesn't happen.
I get blamed for everything.
But no, using the annotation is a really good way to help jog your memory, and also collaborate with other folks. So if you're not using that feature, I'm going to cancel that because I don't want to leave any comments with it.
You said more than a couple times about email campaigns and stuff like that. How does that come in? Does that come in looking like direct? Or
I'm going to come to that.
Okay, great.
And then I'm going to turn it over to Rob.
Nobody wants to hear a program anyway.
Site content. So someone had asked about how you can see what pages are work. What was your question? No, you'd asked something about. Yes. I don't remember either. We'll figure it out. I'm going to turn off my compare to previous period just for simplicity here. The compare to previous period is really handy. I used to have to give this to my vice president and CEO all the time to justify my existence. I no longer work there, so apparently I didn't do a good enough job justifying it. Don't repeat that. I forgot one of my coworkers or former coworkers is in here.
It's on YouTube, man.
Crap.
Live too. All over the world for.
Okay, cool. Anyhow, so when we come over, site content is going to show us all of the different pages that we've got. And you can drill down into these. So here's your page title again as your primary dimension. They've made that one actually pretty handy for you. So I can see all of my pages, and then if I come in and use the secondary dimension dropdown, I can ask and see what my source is. So source or source medium, I like the source medium just because it gives me a little more idea. Again, source, where they were before they landed on your website. Medium, what brought them to your website. So here, the number one way people are getting to their website is either direct, so they're just typing it straight in, or they've got this page bookmarked, which does not surprise me. After that, then we've got Google Organic. If you were running pay-per-click campaigns or email, that would show up in here. This way, we've got our content drill down, where we can actually go through the directory structure on our website so we can see if we've got things. So here I've got it divided out between information that's specifically about the prairies and then information that's specifically about the organization. So I can navigate through my directories this way. The nice thing is, if you have your website organized in a way where you've got, so I just did a whole round of clients who do care management. And we've got both a resource section and a services section. So we'll be able to look through this content drill down and see which one's performing better. So if people are really coming to our resources section, then we know that we can try to move them from our resources over to our service. Here you can see the about, we've got it, information about prairies, information about the organization, and you can see how that breaks down here across the drill down. Landing page and exit pages. This is just another way to get to the same report I've shown you a few different times. So there are multiple ways to get to the same stuff. Again, what you want to look at when you're looking at your landing pages is that bounce rate and that time on site. If you see landing pages that have a high bounce rate and a low number of average pages visited and a low amount of time on site, think about going in there and adding some new calls to action, or if it's a shopping cart or an e-commerce page, making that service a little more or a little less, putting a little less friction there. Exit pages are another good place where you can come and see where visitors are leaving. If you're running a website, say an email sign-up form, and you see a bunch of people are dumping out of that without actually signing up for your email because you have your conversions checked up, then that's one to come back in here and say, okay, maybe we should come in and change this. So this Prairie Burn is one of the pages that we are going to spend a lot of time, I think, reworking on, because we do see a pretty high exit rate from that. Site speed. This is a good one to go to. I'm trying to drive everybody to my portfolio right now, and it was taking my portfolio 33 seconds to load. That's not ideal when you're sending people to a website. So this page timings will go through and it will show you which pages, and again, I've got 51 down here, so I'm just looking at my top 10, but it's going to show me what pages are performing, and this is relative to the rest of your website, these green arrows. So I can see that the calendar page, which is an embedded widget out of Google and probably needs to be updated, is taking a bunch of time to load on this website. Google is handy, and they do give you speed suggestions directly under that. So if you click on this, we'll be able to see once it loads. Let's find that calendar one. So right here, it's telling us the average load time is basically 6.5 seconds, and it's got 6 suggestions for things we can do to improve the speed on our website. So if you click into that, it's going to run an analysis. And while it thinks, any questions? Let's try to fill some time here. Okay. So, for some reason it's giving us a fast load, even though it says it takes 6 seconds. But it's going through, and here it's giving us what the different things are that's causing this page to slow down. So you can see your warnings are in orange, green is good, and red is bad. So this would be if you've got a website and you're not a developer and you're working with a developer, talk with them on how to fix this, or work with your plugin. So we've got 11 problems found. So here it's making recommendations on things to go through and minify JavaScript and CSS, and it's telling me what I could save. So that's a good way if you're having problems with your website, or you're saying, gee, my visitors aren't moving fast. This is a good way to come in. Also, if you see pages have a high exit rate, come over, look at your page speeds, and see if maybe your page speed is what's slowing it down. Events Rob is going to talk about. So let's talk a little bit about email, because I know I mentioned that. I think on acquisition. Okay, so in acquisition, we're going to backtrack here a little bit. We'll go back to the acquisition tab, and we're going to hit the campaigns. Again, campaigns don't necessarily have to be paid. I've got a lot of clients who run campaigns on social media, campaigns to their email lists. So just because it's a campaign doesn't necessarily mean you're paying for it. What's going to show up here is the data. And do you have an example of a campaign that's working?
No.
Okay. One of these days I'll have my act together and I'll have a campaign that's working. So before I post stuff on social media, or before I post stuff, or before I put in an email and send out an email with links in it to try to drive people back to my website. So I ran a newsletter at my last job. We did a monthly kind of thought leadership email where we were sending out information. Sometimes we'd have inline, so as part of the text we'd be calling them to come see something. We'd also have big blue call to action buttons to encourage them to come through there. So if they're just skimming the email, maybe they'll see my headline, they'll see the call to action button, and they'll click on that. So we're differentiating between those buttons, and we're also differentiating between our newsletters. So what that will all show up in here. And the way you get that data to show up in here is if you just Google URL Builder, it's going to be this top one, and I think we'll post a link to this when we get out there. But what you can come in here and do is you can build your URL that will put those parameters in there. So you'll put in your website URL, the full thing, the campaign source. So that's going to be, what is this? So for me, this was always our newsletter. The campaign medium, and they're telling you right beneath it. So when I send out the email, it's always email, right? That is what is bringing them to my website. My campaign name was usually just the month that the newsletter was going out, so April 2019. That way I could look through and see how my emails were historically performing. Then campaign term and campaign content, you can put them in there if you want to use them. Those are usually reserved for the folks who are doing paid advertising. If you need the extra fields, you can do that. The nice thing about that is that this is all going to show up then in your Google Analytics dashboard. So I use this primarily in email, also when I did social media. So if I was running a social media campaign and I put stuff on LinkedIn and stuff on Facebook that's the same, we were primarily B2B, so we'd see a lot more LinkedIn traffic than we would. And folks have said, well, you can get all those insights over on Facebook and over on LinkedIn. But I would still encourage you, if you're doing campaigns and trying to drive traffic to your website through social media, use this URL link builder too, because then what you can come up here and do is you can come up here and add a segment. And if we do a create new segment, and I click on traffic sources, then I can come back in here and fill in my campaign medium source and keyword based on what I did over here. Then I've got a segment of my audience, so I can go and look at how these people who get my newsletter or were caught up in my social media campaign interact with my website relative to everybody else. Or if I'm doing a newsletter and I'm doing A/B testing, I can differentiate and see if I had people go deeper in on one version than another. So using this campaign URL builder before you send out emails is a way to pull all that data in and then keep it separated. So one of the nice things that I was able to do was then go back and look at my past month's newsletters and see what performed well, and then use that to guide my content strategy moving forward.
This is a manual process. It's like copy this, paste this.
Yeah, so if you've got a bunch of these to do, Google has a Google Sheet that you can just put it all in and then just copy and paste it out of there. It's essentially, this tool is bulk. If you use Tag Manager, Tag Manager can auto-fire some of this stuff inside your website, but that wouldn't necessarily do you any good on your campaigns that are off of your website. So yeah, it does become a little bit manual. But if you have like 20 of these to do, I wouldn't use their builder. There's a Google Sheet that'll just, it's a formula that just concatenates everything together.
So this is not creating a different URL, it's just creating a way to track everything.
Yep. So so if I was trying to drive people to my portfolio, and I'm actually doing this when I'm out talking with people, I can do a campaign source. Let me see, I've got this. My tab will let me back in. I thought I'd written this out. Anyhow, so for my campaign source, I think what I'm doing is I'm saying in person, and then my medium is what event I was at, so networking, and then the campaign would be the actual networking group I went to. What's really important here is if you do this, write it down so you don't forget. This is case sensitive, so if you're doing like promotion with a lowercase p and promotion with a capital P, when you come over to your Google Analytics on this side, that will show up as two different ones. So you want to make sure, my rule is I just never capitalize anything in URL parameters, that way I'm always consistent. But you want to make sure that when you're filling this out in your campaign builder, that you're always using the same campaign source, same campaign medium, that way you don't get your analytics jumbled up. Because once it goes into the Google Analytics database, you can't change it. Did that answer your question? Kind of?
Yeah.
Okay.
So did I understand that they do not store your different campaigns anywhere?
No. So I'm saying that you'd want to write this down for just so you remember how you're naming everything. So like my naming convention was for my email campaign was always month underscore the year. I mean the full year, 2018, 2017. But that way I had consistency in my data because let's say I'm in a hurry because I was always doing my email campaigns at the very last minute. And that's now on YouTube too. Awesome.
Everybody does.
Cannot, yeah, right. Who's working ahead, really? But when I was pushing out in the last minute, I wasn't thinking, did I do it? How did I do it? And having to go back into my analytics and actually look. I just had a document on my computer that said, these are my conventions for how I name this stuff when I build it out in the campaign builder. And then I had a spreadsheet set up because I didn't want to spend time going through and doing each one of these because that just gets obnoxious and old. Did Rob run away right before I was going to turn it over to him? Of course he did. Any questions? That was a lot of information all at once.
For malware links,
Say what?
for malware links, you can use Windows Sandbox, and then you just blow away the new virtual machine
Right.
once you're done clicking on it.
Yeah, if you want to find out what it is, but a lot of those, I mean, just don't go there in the first place.
Doesn't look like an URL that makes sense. You just don't go there.
For the social, that automatically has the different social
Yes.
platforms that you don't have to do anything to configure.
Right, and I think on these guys we're only going to see Facebook. We're going to see that I don't have any goals, but yeah, so I haven't had to do anything, but it is telling me Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and Instagram stories. Oh, that's new. I didn't realize they're getting that granular with Instagram stories. That's kind of cool. So if you're using Instagram stories as part of your promotion, you can now see that without doing anything extra. Yeah.
Is that people that are going to Facebook from your website?
Correct. Yep. So this would be they put a link on Facebook and then they clicked on that link and came into the website. So I guess because I'm bad at time management, you'll all have to come back next month and do the goal stuff.
We got time.
Do we? Okay, go for it.
Yeah, let's go. Yeah, why not? I'll play through it. How quickly can you all learn?
We're going to find out he's a more efficient presenter than I am.
All right. So before I go ahead and get into this, I will, if you all got an email notification that said that this meetup was canceled, that's my fault. I'm an idiot. Because I was over there trying to like put pictures from this thing up there and I clicked cancel. I didn't realize it was going to cancel the event. Terrible UI. I'm going to complain to Meetup about that. Also, it makes it impossible for you guys to go ahead and check into this on our website, which I did figure out what the heck was wrong with the login thing, so that works now. So, yeah, that makes that not work now because technically there's no event happening right now, even though clearly there is an event happening right now. So, my fault. Sorry about that. I don't know what to tell you. Oh, I will say this though. If anybody here is trying to get credit for showing up to these events, just send an email to wpomahagroup@gmail.com with your name and just say, hey, I was here, endgame, whatever, and then I'll go through all those emails and I'll manually check everybody in later after the fact. So my apologies for that. Yeah, wpomahagroup@gmail.com is the email address for this group. So, yeah, I'll go in there and do that after the fact. Sorry, I don't know what to say. I'm an idiot. Anyway, let's learn about event tracking. Also, I figured out what that weird thing is with the login. I updated a plugin today that I should not have updated, apparently. Oh, is that what it is?
Some reCAPTCHA, protect your login with reCAPTCHA plugin thing. I don't know if they updated to reCAPTCHA version 3 or something, but it caused it to not work. And so I had to go in and log into my computer at work, where I was logged in earlier, just to go deactivate that because I had no way of logging in otherwise. So that was fun. I got that all figured out though.
All right, cool. So,
Command line.
no, we're not doing any command line. You can forget about
to
that.
deactivate your plugin.
Oh yeah, no, I was hoping to not have to do that, and so luckily I was still logged in at work, and so I just remoted in and did that. Deactivated the plugin. We're good. Okay, so we obviously have Google Analytics for the wpomaha.org webpage, and so that's what we're looking at here. Is that, and I suppose if we went to real time, we could see how many of you are actually on the website. Probably not many. Yeah, probably not at all. One, probably me, on this other computer. Cool. So let's talk about the goal stuff first, and then we'll do the event tracking. Event tracking is really easy. Anybody here know JavaScript? Raise your hand high if you know JavaScript. If you know JavaScript, you are empowered and you can set up event tracking very, very, very easily. Okay, so to set up goals, you just go into the admin area, under view, you go to goals, you say create a new goal, and these are really, really easy to set up. They have these templates in here. That's usually what I use, is the templates. You can go custom if you want, and there's some other crazy stuff you could deal with in there. But for the most part, I just go for a template. Yeah, so if we wanted to say place an order or create an account or whatever, we could do that. Sign up, share, media play, these are all built in. Yes?
So if you wanted to set up an event tracker on somebody clicking on a call to action to call your phone number,
Yeah.
where would you put it?
So you would probably set up and you would hook up an event handler using jQuery or JavaScript to that button, and then have it call a function that says, like, I don't know, track Google Analytics or something like that, event track or something, and then you would have it trigger this function that I'm going to show you how to send to Google. But you do have to have Google Analytics already on your site, like, and working and everything, like their event, the actual main Google Analytics code that they tell you to embed on the site, or that you use a plugin to embed on your site, that does have to be there in order for the event tracking code to work at all, because it's part of the front end client side API. We'll get to that in a second. We're not quite there yet, though. Goals are different and do not require that type of stuff. I think I'm just going to go to custom, because it doesn't matter like what you call the template. The bottom line is it's still going to go in and ask you, I mean, we can call this whatever, like check-in, I guess. We'll do that. We'll call it check-in, and then I'll say destination. No, I'm sorry, page. Continue. And that is not what I thought it would be. Nope. Go back. I guess it is destination. That is what I want. So equals to / check-in. Is this begins with? I think we just want this. I don't know how particular this is, because we don't really have HTML pages. I'm just going to leave it like that. Then you can assign a monetary value to it or not. I don't know. I'm just going to give it like 5 cents. And then you can assign it to a funnel. You don't have to do that though. I'm going to leave it as 5 cents, even though I'm not really getting any money for it. And so there you go. There's success. And now when I go into my goals in here, which I remember how to get to, behavior, no, conversions probably. Yeah, it's in here. Conversions, goals, overview. Hopefully it shows up in here. Goal URLs. Well, I think you have to have it set up before it actually starts tracking it. So it won't go back and like check previous history. But now, from now on, if anybody goes to check in, it'll give me 5 cents in this thing, which, whatever. If we want to value it at that. So you can do all sorts of crazy stuff with funnels, just like you can with the segmentation that he was showing off earlier. This is really only applies to stuff that's like e-commerce style stores. There's actually e-commerce plugins like for WooCommerce that do stuff for you when it comes to the tracking. It'll like connect the dots in a sense. There's also, if you go into admin, I believe there's like, oh yeah, there's e-commerce settings. And you can turn these on, and you can set up funnels in here too. We're not going to get into funnels because obviously we don't have time. But I mean, I think everybody should know what a funnel is, right? Like, hey, they come from this product, or they come from that product, or different categories of products, stuff like that. Then you can funnel your data in a sense. The cooler stuff is event tracking. I am just going to Google this. Is it over here? No. I just need to get the code. And I could actually pop into the code because I did put some. Actually, I'll probably do that in a second here. That is not what I want. I want Google, not some blog post. I think it's this one right here. Okay, so it really is this simple. All you do is you copy this right here and paste it into a function, preferably. So what I would do is, I'll just go into code and show you. Don't get scared, everyone. It'll be all right. I know, it looks crazy. So if I go into Meetup for WP groups, this is the Meetup plugin that I've been working on. So basically I set up event tracking code so that whenever anybody successfully checks in, it like gives us an event, or it registers an event. I'm trying to remember where I did that. I think it's in JS under check-in. It's going to lean against this wall. This is nice. Okay, so you can see that we've got this here. Basically, all you do is you make sure you give it the hit type of event, and then after that, you can put whatever you want in here. So I just, you don't have to go create these categories. It'll just make these on the fly. So I gave it an event category of Meetup, I gave it an event action of check-in, and then I gave it an event label of successful check-in. And then down here on this one, I gave it a failed check-in in the case where the check-in fails. So that way I can see like how accurately my plugin is working using Google Analytics, which is kind of cool. Now we could have done this a much different way, and I'll show you guys how. If there's any developers in the room, pay attention. So I'm just going to create a function called I'll call it GA event tracking. And then we can put this in there. And then I can just replace this with a bunch of variables if I want to. So I could just say like cat action label. And then I can just replace this stuff with this. Oh gosh. Copy. Paste. Copy. Paste. Copy. Paste. And there we go. So that will trigger. And then now all I gotta do is put this up here. And now I can just say Meetup, whoops, Meetup, comma, check-in, comma, failed check-in, if I wanted to do it that way. And that's a little bit more efficient because then you only have to write one function that like fires off your event tracking instead of like having this big long thing all over the place in your code. And Yeah, I don't know. It's just nicer this way because it's just one line. So, yeah, I don't know. Does that make sense, everybody? It's pretty self-explanatory. That's just how I do it. I think a lot of other people probably do it that way too. It's just a smart way of doing it. So then what that does is it just puts an event in our Google Analytics, which now I'm mad that I didn't actually test this yesterday because I knew it would work. Where am I going? Come on. Man, this thing's slow. I don't think it's the internet. I think it's this computer. Just so you know.
I wasn't going to blame your computer.
You should.
I didn't want to make it mad at me while I was trying to use it.
I don't really care about this thing. So now you can go under Behavior and Events and Overview. Oh, maybe I did. Oh no, I just ran a testing one. I did this literally in the console. So I have this one called testing. I just literally opened up the inspect console and put this in, and boom, there it is. Unfortunately, we can't check in for the one today because I screwed up the status of the meetup, and I have it reaching out to the API when you get to that page, and so it says, oh, well, but meetup.com says there's no event today. So the user interface isn't showing up. It does that. So I was hoping that would be part of the presentation. I'd be like, hey, everybody check in. Now we can see how many people actually checked in Google Analytics, and totally botched that. Yeah, so any questions about the check-in or the event tracking or goals? Yes.
I got a question. I'm curious to show us how to do both, set up conversion tracking and event tracking. Your opinion is one better than the other?
So yeah, event tracking will give you much more control because you can programmatically control when the event is triggered, where the goal tracking, you're basically at the mercy of whatever they have set up for you to use. So if we go back in here and we look at what they had there, it was basically just like what page they land on. I probably should just go over all the parameters that they let you do it by. So I'll just go into custom again. Yeah, so it's basically like a destination, what page they land on, a duration, so how long they're on a specific page, pages or screens per session. So basically, like if they've gotten to 2 pages, 3 pages, 4 pages, 5 pages, whatever, then you like equate that to like a certain value or whatever. Or you can actually use an event in here for your goal as well. But I think you have to have the event already being registered on your page.
Yeah, it's easy to do that through Tag Manager now.
Yeah.
Do you have any tutorials related to Tag Manager with WordPress?
I mean, we could.
I've never even used Tag Manager, to be completely honest with you. Nor have I used the Monster Insights or whatever that's called, right? Is that what you're talking? Yeah, those cost money, especially the Monster. I don't know about the Tag Manager, but
Monster's free.
Monster's free?
There's one there's a free, and then there's a pro version.
The pro version of Monster Insight basically it pulls in all the stuff that you can get from Google Analytics just into your WordPress dashboard, but it will put on the right tracking code, and that's really all I use it for, is just get the tracking code in there, then I do everything in Google Analytics. Tag Manager is free. There is a more amped up version in Marketing 360. But like scroll depth, I think that was one we talked about talking about that I didn't talk about. Tag Manager, you can deploy a piece of JavaScript automatically now that'll show you how far down a page somebody scrolls. And then you can do a lot of auto firing for the events too, using Tag Manager, so you don't have to go in and manually add all of that stuff to your code. The events manager, at least from a marketing standpoint, I'd almost always I'd always put on events, especially if you have like a multimedia website where you're trying to watch like YouTube plays or video plays or audio file plays, because it's a lot easier to capture those with events than it is through the categories.
They should probably be more transparent about the fact that there is a free version, because when you go to their website, it doesn't mention anything about that. So
Ooh, that's pricey.
that's why I was under the impression that it wasn't free, because I went to their website.
You go to WordPress and you tell it to download.
In the repository, the plugin repository, there's a free version.
There's a free version of the plugin repository.
Surprised they don't have a link to that on their website. So you could try before you buy? Isn't that the reason? Yeah, I don't know. Kind of makes sense to me. Maybe? I don't know.
Monster Insights does something similar to Tag Manager.
Yes, yeah. And I think it also lets you manage the, I think it has some tool set up to where you can do event tracking. You can like set up events in there, I think, right? Am I wrong?
Through the pro version.
Yeah, through the pro version you can
so
do.
If you want to do the free version, if you want to have event tracking and you want to do it for free, the best thing is to use Tag Manager, both to deploy your Google Analytics code on your website, as well as put in your event tracking through Tag Manager. And just keep it all housed in one place. Makes it nice and clean. If you need to change things, you don't have to go into multiple places. And there are plugins that'll actually put Tag Manager on a WordPress website too, so you don't have to code
it. I believe Monster Insights also lets you do user ID tracking, which is pretty cool. I don't know if you guys knew that you could do that. I was going to demonstrate that. Yeah, but I'm not going to. Yeah, because I was gonna do that live and have that figured out live, but yeah, not so much now. But yeah, it's not that hard to do. You just pass this parameter in. Oh, I don't know what's going on with this thing now. It's bugging. It's not even letting me log in now. All right, cool. Well, something's going wrong. Well, lots of things are going wrong. Yeah, so there is a way. I'll show you guys real quick. I'll just Google it. User ID tracking, Google Analytics. It's really easy. You just have to make sure you've already run the regular GA code import thing or whatever. And I mean, a lot of people don't know this, but you can actually pass it a user ID. So where's the code? Here we go. This right here. So if you have a user ID for your user and you can like access it via JavaScript, you can just replace this right here with their user ID. And then what that does is it tracks, it'll actually, there's a feature that you can enable. You have to actually enable this feature. I don't know why. But there's a feature you can enable where it'll do session tracking and tie it to the user ID, so that if they do a bunch of stuff before they log in, it'll actually attribute all of their traffic that they, like all their user flow, to that user ID after they've logged in. It'll go back, find their session ID, and match the session up with their user, so that you can actually see which users are doing what in Google Analytics, which is pretty cool. But it's only going to do it by an ID number, so it's not going to give you like a username or an email address or anything like that. You'd have to cross-reference that with their user ID. However, if you're a savvy person and know how to use the Google Analytics API, that means that you could essentially develop a plugin that hits their API with the user ID and gives you all their traffic. I know, I lose most people at this point in time. That's why I'm at the end.
So that was pretty good for people. Traffic business, but if they're a Cox home user,
I'm not even talking about IP addresses. I'm talking about user IDs. No, it's cool. This only applies to websites where you have users actually logging in, basically is what this is. So if your website doesn't have users logging in, then it doesn't really matter anyway.
So when you have a backend that people are logging into, typically you're tracking their ID within that system to send that ID to Google Analytics.
Correct, yeah. And in WordPress, you get a user, and I'm sure there's some systems out there that have account management where they don't give you a user ID, but it's not a smart idea. WordPress and many other systems where a user can log in and create an account, you're automatically assigned an ID, and so that's what you would do, is just provide the ID through there. I guess you could use the username as the user ID if you wanted to, as long as it doesn't have spaces in it, is my guess. Yeah. I guess you can provide it whatever you want. Yeah, I don't know. I wouldn't do email. You can probably do username though. Yeah, like WordPress username if you wanted to. I don't see why not. It doesn't care. It's just going to take a bunch of characters and like match it up with their traffic. So whether it's numbers or letters, I don't think it matters as long as they're just characters. I don't know if there's special character limitations. My guess is probably not. Yeah.
Your JavaScript for Google Analytics, do you put it in the header or do you use a plugin yourself?
Personally, I use a plugin to do that because why not? Yeah, I don't know. It's just easier to use a plugin. Obviously, I know how to code, so I could go in there and do it myself if I wanted to, but why bother?
Is there some extra features you get that you want it with maybe your own code?
No, that's another reason why I just use the plugin. Because as long as the plugin is initiating the Google Analytics like connection and getting all that working, if I want to add additional code, like say for the user ID or the event tracking or whatever, there's nothing preventing me from adding that manually after the fact. So, you see what I'm saying? Like, just because I added that stuff using a plugin doesn't mean I have to add those other features using a plugin. I can just have the plugin take care of the basic part for me and then take care of the rest of it myself.
But when you update the plugin, it overwrites some of your changes, previous changes.
What plugin?
Okay, so you have a plugin that has an update for it. You made updates within one of the files.
I wouldn't add the code in the file for the plugin.
Okay, I see. You do it in your functions or as something external.
Correct. I would put it in my theme, or I would create my own little plugin that just lives on its own, that is only for that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So you don't have to worry about that.
Correct. Yeah. Yeah. A child theme, obviously, not a parent theme. Yeah.
What plugin do you use for Google Analytics?
I was going to show you, but I can't log into. I can't log into the website right now. If you just type in Google Analytics, you'll find a bunch.
I honestly I forgot what it's called. But you add to your site, you enter your Google Analytics code, hit save, you never. If you search Google Analytics,
I use this right here. This is what I use for sure. I think this is what you're thinking of when you say Monster Insights. Google Analytics dashboard plugin for WordPress by Monster Insights. Is that the free one you're talking about? Yeah, but this isn't technically Monster Insights. This is just the dashboard plugin.
I didn't realize there were two of them.
Yeah, no. So you can use this to have it put your stuff in there for you. There's actually a couple of different ways you can do it. You can actually just go get your code and put it in there. It also has a feature where you can connect it straight to your Google Analytics account by giving it your username and password for Google, and it'll take care of everything for you that way.
Awesome, thank you.
Yeah, no problem.
Yeah, these analytics, I mean, it just sounds like you can figure out what side of the head they park their hair on if you need to, but what realistically, how much does a person need to know? Just who's hit it, or how many times like the whole page is hit and some of the other pages, and then
talk about the demographic that's in your website.
Yeah.
Focus your advertising efforts.
Okay.
If you want to talk about beginner stuff to look at, I would just say first thing you do when you get in here, just go to audience and overview. This will give you great beginner information right out the gate. And so you'll see all the important stuff like how many users, how many new users, sessions, the bounce rate, which is really important. That's where I would start, is just looking at this. Also being able to change your date range, pretty important. So we can see we can kind of scope our analytics, like compare this year at this time to last year, whatever, catch certain peaks. Zoom in on those peaks. So say, oh, okay, well, on April 13th, we got a whole bunch of traffic, 32 people. We can just go in here and say, I only want to look at April 13th. Whoops, meant that. And then once we're on April 13th, we can go to behavior. Yes, behavior, and then site content and all pages. And we can see which pages all of these people were going to for the most part, so that way we can tell why did we have so much traffic that day. So I've done this a lot for other clients in the past where they'll do social media blog posts and stuff like that. They'll post something on social media. It'll get a huge reaction. It'll go viral. People will start sharing it, whatever. And then they'll get a bunch of hits on their blog. And then whatever, 3 weeks later, you're going through their analytics. You're like, what the heck happened on whatever, March 17th? There's like whatever, 500 views, 500 hits on their website all of a sudden. And then you can like correlate social media marketing efforts with certain days, because you'll see the blog post that everybody went to from social media will be the page that shows up at the top, other than probably their homepage or whatever. It'll be easy to like figure all that information out. Also, while we're on the all pages and all content situation here, another little neat trick that you can do is, does anybody here know what a query string parameter is? Yeah, so we can actually create links with query string parameters in them, and then that will get recorded in Google Analytics. And so we can do searches in here for that query string parameter to see how many page hits registered with the query string parameter in it. So kind of like, some people will use bit.ly to like, for like email marketing or social media marketing. They'll like run the link through bit.ly so that they can go to bit.ly and see like how much like traffic this email got versus that email or whatever. You don't have to do it that way. You could just throw a query string parameter into the link that they click on. The user doesn't know any different. They end up on the same page no matter what anyway. And then you can go into Google Analytics and search in Google Analytics by the query string parameter. So you could call your query string parameter like big April marketing campaign or something, and just search for that. So now, okay, boom, all of a sudden I've got a bunch of people in here at whatever, because I can just go to about, right? And it'll, whoops, I mean to put the question mark there. But yeah, if I just type in about, it'll show me all the page hits on about. So it does record. I don't have any examples of this because I haven't done this on this website, but you could totally throw like a link to wpomaha.org/about ? Campaign equals March 2019 or something, and then that's going to show up in Google Analytics.
So that's what that URL builder does if you want to do it more automatically.
Yeah, so just a neat little tip there, because it's not going to make a difference what happens on the page, but Google Analytics is going to record that, and it gives you an easy way to go into Google Analytics and like find all of the instances where they hit with that query string parameter. And it makes it really easy for you to like track different, like you could send out, I don't know, like 3 different emails to 3 different groups of people and see which one's more successful, or maybe have like 3 different buttons on your email that send them to the same page but with different query string parameters, so you can see like which part of the email was more got more people to click on it than others. You can do all sorts of cool stuff like that.
So does like Constant Contact and MailChimp do similar things? Could you, with like different mailing groups and stuff, is there any way to kind of utilize any of that?
I don't think they use query string parameters. You would have to go into your respective email marketing campaign provider, and they do collect analytics, but those analytics get sent back to their record-keeping database or whatever, and so it's not going to end up in your Google Analytics unless you're using something like, I think MailChimp does have a way for you to connect emails to your Google Analytics account, but I don't know if the query string parameter stuff is going to still work in the same fashion.
So what you could do, so like the email list that we sent out, we would have, we had referral sources, trust officers, and then elder law attorneys, right? One on the financial, one on the law side. So on my segmented, I had it segmented out in MailChimp, so I kind of knew who was who. And then I put in one of those parameters to let me know that this was the one that went out to those elder law attorneys. This was the other one that I could follow them around.